It happened at the Christmas dinner table, right when the wine had loosened tongues and everyone was pretending to be warm. Madison leaned forward, her glass dangling between two fingers, the candlelight catching the edge of her smile. Sharp. Practiced. Dangerous. Go on, she said, loud enough to slice through the hum of carols and silverware. If you're really that brave, just leave. You wouldn't last a week without us. The room stilled. Forks paused midair. Someone chuckled, unsure. Everyone watched me, waiting for the familiar moment when I'd shrink, apologize, smooth it over. I'd done it my whole life. Swallowed comments. Took the hit. Made things comfortable. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with that numb pressure you feel right before your body decides for you. I stared at the table runner, red linen, perfectly pressed. Then, at the keys beside my plate. House keys. Car keys. The quiet symbols of everything they thought they owned through me. Madison's smile widened, confident. She was enjoying this. My father's jaw was already tight, rehearsing his disappointment. My mother avoided my eyes, swirling her wine like none of this was happening. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I reached forward and placed the keys on the table. The sound they made was barely there, a soft click, but Madison heard it. Her smile froze. I stood, chair legs scraping too loudly against the floor, and the silence finally broke, not with laughter but shock. I walked past the glowing tree, past the framed family photos curated for strangers, and out into the cold. The air burned my lungs. Snow brushed my face. Behind me, the house stayed bright and perfect. Inside, I knew, panic was already setting in. But out there, numb as I was, something else crept in. Relief. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself the way I always had, stitching apologies together just to keep the room calm. The dining room was loud in that fake holiday way, silverware clinking, someone laughing too hard, Bing Crosby humming from a Bluetooth speaker in the corner. Madison's words still hung in the air, sharp and smug, daring me to prove I couldn't survive without them. Everyone watched me. I could feel it, the familiar pause, the expectation that I'd shrink, smooth it over, make things easier. Instead, I reached for the keys. They were sitting beside my plate, warm from my palm earlier. House keys. Car keys. Spare keys they all treated like shared property. I lifted them slowly and set them down on the white linen tablecloth. The sound they made was barely there, a soft click, but it landed heavier than shouting ever could. No one spoke. Madison's smile froze, mid-victory. My father's jaw tightened the way it did when a script went off track. My mother stared at the keys like they might move on their own. For the first time, I wasn't performing. I wasn't managing anyone's emotions. I was done. I stood, pushed my chair back, and felt the rush of cold clarity move through me. My hands were steady. My chest felt hollow but clean. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe them a closing statement. I walked past the Christmas tree glowing red and gold, past the framed family photos that never quite felt like mine, and out the front door into the winter night. Snow hit my face immediately, sharp and honest. Behind me, the house stayed bright and curated and silent. That silence wasn't empty. It was final. I walked past the Christmas tree without looking at it. The lights were still blinking, lurid gold, painfully cheerful, casting soft reflections on the hardwood-floored, polished myself every December. Someone behind me let out a laugh, the kind that trails off when it realizes it doesn't have an audience anymore. I didn't turn around. The front hall smelled like pine and wine, and something baked too sweet. My coat hung on its hook, but I left it there. I didn't want anything that still belonged to that house. I opened the door and cold air rushed in, sharp and honest, biting my cheeks like it was trying to wake me up. Snow was falling in that quiet, deliberate way it does in small American towns, thick flakes drifting under streetlights. It muffled everything. Even the house behind me. The voices, the clinking glasses, the performance of being a family, felt sealed off, like it was already part of another life. My hands were shaking as I stepped onto the porch. Not fear. Relief. The kind that makes your knees weak, because your body finally realizes it doesn't have to brace for impact anymore. I took one step, then another, boots crunching softly, and the sound felt louder than any argument I'd ever swallowed. I heard the door close behind me. Or maybe it didn't. It didn't matter. What mattered was the space opening up in my chest as I walked down the driveway, breath turning white in the dark. For the first time in years, no one was watching me, waiting for me to adjust myself to their comfort. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't staying. And as the snow erased my footprints almost as soon as I made them, I realized something steady and terrifying and true. I was finally gone. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't grab a coat. I walked out with only my phone and the envelope my mother had pressed into my hand 2 days before she died. It was small, cream-colored, the paper soft from being handled too carefully. My name was written in her looping handwriting, the kind she used when she wanted something to feel personal, not official. When she gave it to me, her grip lingered longer than usual. "Not yet," she whispered, serious in a way that didn't match her gentle voice. "You'll know when." At the time, I nodded like a child accepting a rule she didn't understand. Now, standing in the cold with snow settling into my hair, the envelope felt heavier than it should have. Like it carried more than paper. Like it was waiting for the right version of me to exist. My phone buzzed in my palm, missed calls stacking up, names flashing that I wasn't ready to face, but the envelope stayed silent. Steady. Patient. I tucked it into my jacket pocket, close to my chest, the way you hold something fragile on instinct. Mom had always understood timing. She knew when to speak, and when to let silence do the work. She knew when truth would save you, and when it would break you open too soon. I wondered if she'd known this night was coming. If she'd seen the way my life was tightening, inch by inch, until leaving would be the only way to breathe. I didn't open the envelope. Not on the sidewalk. Not under the streetlight. Not while my hands were shaking. Whatever was inside wasn't meant for the girl who still wanted approval. It was meant for the woman walking forward, carrying her mother's quiet certainty into the dark. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stop moving. The cold hit my lungs the second I stepped off the porch, sharp and clean, like it was trying to wake me up. Snow crunched under my shoes as I walked down the driveway, then faster, half walking, half running, because there was a part of me deeply trained and dangerously familiar that wanted to turn around. That voice knew the script. Go back. Apologize. Smooth it over. Sit back down and make things easier for everyone else. I told myself not to listen. My hands shook, not from the cold at first, but from the sudden absence of instructions. For most of my life, someone had always been telling me where to stand, what to fix, how to behave. Now the night was wide open. No plan. No destination. Just streetlights humming softly, and houses glowing warm behind their windows. I walked past parked cars dusted with snow, past a closed pharmacy and a darkened yoga studio, my breath puffing white in the air. Each step felt wrong and right at the same time. Fear buzzed under my skin. What are you doing? Where will you sleep? But, beneath it, something quieter began to surface. It surprised me how quickly it came. Not all at once, but in small pockets. The farther I got, the less that trained part of me pulled back. My pace slowed. My shoulders dropped. The cold stopped feeling hostile and started feeling honest. I realized then I didn't need to know where I was going yet. I just needed distance. Enough space for my own thoughts to catch up with me. The night didn't demand answers. It let me walk, breathe, and exist without asking anything in return. For the first time, that was enough. I didn't realize it all at once. It came to me in pieces, like receipts I'd stuffed into a drawer for years and suddenly dumped onto the kitchen table. I remembered sitting at my laptop late at night, paying bills that weren't technically mine. The mortgage portal. The utility account. Insurance renewals. I told myself it was temporary, that families help each other out, that I was just the organized one. "Can you take care of it?" my dad would say, already walking away. "You're so good with this stuff," my mom would add, relieved. Madison never asked. She assumed. I signed documents I didn't fully read because no one ever gave me time to read them. There was always urgency. A deadline. A problem that needed fixing now. I learned to skim, to trust, to believe that my role was to smooth things over. Dependable. Responsible. The words sounded like praise. They felt like purpose. But looking back, I see how cleanly it worked for them. Every responsibility flowed downhill to me. Every risk, every late fee avoided, every credit score protected, every quiet fix that kept their lives running on time. I absorbed the pressure so they could stay comfortable. I was the buffer between chaos and consequence. Reliable was the word they used. What it really meant was compliant. No one asked if I was tired. No one checked if I could afford it, financially or emotionally. They didn't need my consent. They relied on my silence. On the fact that I'd been trained not to push back, not to make things awkward, not to say no. The bitter part wasn't the work. It was the realization that my usefulness had been mistaken for love, and that I had helped them make that mistake. I wasn't trusted. I was managed. And the moment I finally saw that clearly, something in me stopped cooperating. The park was empty in the way only winter empties things. No joggers, no dogs, no distant laughter drifting in from a nearby street. Just snow falling in slow, patient spirals, thick enough to soften sound, light enough to feel like permission. I sat on a bench dusted white, brushing off a thin layer with my sleeve, and for the first time that night, I stopped moving. My breath came out in pale clouds, steady, visible. Each one felt earned. The cold bit at my cheeks, but it wasn't cruel. It was clean. Honest. Nothing like the warmth I'd left behind, the curated glow of Christmas lights, the forced laughter, the way silence there always meant I was about to be corrected. Here, silence didn't lean over me. It didn't wait for me to explain myself or perform relief. It just existed. Thick and gentle. The kind that lets your shoulders drop without asking why they were raised in the first place. A street lamp flickered at the edge of the path, casting a soft halo over the snow. Somewhere nearby, traffic hummed faintly, a reminder that the city was still alive, still moving, even if I wasn't ready to rejoin it yet. I pulled my knees closer, hands tucked into my coat pockets, and felt my pulse slow. For years, quiet had scared me. Quiet meant I'd missed something. Quiet meant I was failing. But sitting there, watching the snow settle into clean lines on the ground, I realized this kind of quiet wasn't absence. It was space. No one needed anything from me. No one was watching to see if I'd shrink. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with cold air that smelled faintly of pine and wet pavement. For the first time in a long time, breathing didn't feel like preparation. It felt like arrival. The calls started less than 10 minutes after I walked out into the snow. At first, I thought, stupidly, that maybe someone was worried. That maybe leaving the table, the house, the entire performance, had scared them enough to care. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket like a trapped insect. Once. Twice. Then it didn't stop. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, there were already missed calls stacked on my screen. My father's name. My mother's. Madison's. Again and again. I didn't answer. I didn't slow down. I stopped under a streetlight and finally looked. No messages asking if I was okay. No, where are you? No, are you safe? Just demands, disguised as urgency. Call me now. This is ridiculous. We need to talk. Come back immediately. One voicemail slipped through before I silenced the phone. My father's voice was tight, irritated, not afraid. You need to come home. We can't access the utility account. The bank login isn't working. I laughed out loud, the sound sharp in the cold air. That was it. That was the emergency. Not me, walking alone at night with snow soaking through my shoes. Not the fact that I'd left without a coat. Not the silence I'd carried for years finally breaking. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the lights, the money, the systems they'd never bothered to understand because I always handled them. The calls kept coming until my screen filled with red numbers. 30, 40, what? I felt something settle in my chest. Not fear, not guilt. Clarity. For the first time, I saw it cleanly. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure. And the moment I stepped away, everything started to flicker. The text came through just after midnight, when the town felt suspended between Christmas lights and silence. I was sitting alone in a small all-night cafe near downtown, my coat still dusted with snow, my hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't ordered myself. The phone vibrated once. Unknown number. I'm awake if you need somewhere to go. LG. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My first instinct was caution. Years of living in my family's orbit had trained me to expect traps disguised as kindness. I typed nothing back. Then another message appeared, slower, deliberate. Tomorrow, there are things you need to see. My pulse ticked up, sharp and cold. LGI. Linda Graves. My mother's attorney. The last time I'd seen her was at the will reading, a beige conference room, lukewarm coffee, her eyes lingering on me a beat too long. She'd shaken my hand and said, "Your mother trusted you." At the time, it felt ceremonial. Polite. Empty. Now it felt loaded. I glanced toward the cafe window. Snow slid past the glass in lazy spirals. Outside, couples laughed on the sidewalk, arms linked, heading somewhere warm and certain. Inside, my phone felt heavier than it should have. Why now? Why tonight? I thought of the envelope in my pocket, the one my mother pressed into my hand days before she died. "Not yet," she'd whispered. "You'll know when." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could ignore this. Pretend the message never came. Go back to surviving by staying invisible. Instead, I typed, "I'm okay. Just needed space." The reply came instantly. "I know. Come by in the morning." A chill slid down my spine. Not fear exactly, but recognition. Whatever waited behind that message wasn't comfort. It was truth. And for the first time, I understood that my mother hadn't just left me memories. She'd left me a door. The cafe was one of those places that stayed open too late for its own good, wedged between a closed bookstore and a yoga studio with darkened windows. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, soft and forgiving. I stepped inside without thinking, snow melting into my hair, cheeks numb from the cold, hands still shaking from everything I'd just walked away from. The barista glanced up, took me in. No coat, red eyes, breath coming a little too fast, and didn't ask for a story. That alone almost broke me. "Peppermint okay?" she asked, already reaching for a mug. I nodded. My throat felt too tight for words. She set the cup in front of me, steam curling into the air, sharp and clean. "Row night," she said gently, like an observation instead of a demand. "Yeah," I managed. She didn't push. Didn't tilt her head or lower her voice like she was bracing for drama. She just rang up the drink, slid a napkin over, and went back to wiping the counter, humming softly to a song playing overhead. Some indie Christmas cover I didn't recognize. I wrapped my hands around the mug and let the heat sink into my palms. Peppermint hit my nose, clearing something out of my chest. Outside, the snow thickened, blurring the streetlight. Inside, everything slowed. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed quietly at a corner table. The espresso machine hissed like a steady breath. For the first time that night, no one needed anything from me. I wasn't fixing a problem or smoothing a moment or absorbing someone else's comfort. I was just a person sitting in a cafe at 1 a.m, drinking tea. And that simple respect, the absence of pressure, the permission to exist without explanation, felt like shelter. The message came through while I was sitting alone at a corner table in a nearly empty cafe, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and a lemon cleaner. My phone buzzed once, then again, sharp against the wood. I didn't need to open it to know it was Madison. I always knew when she was angry. She announced it like weather. When I finally looked, her words hit hard and fast. "You're pathetic." Then, another. "Get back here. You're embarrassing yourself." A third followed before I could breathe. "You don't survive without us. Stop this and come home." I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the black glass. For years, those words worked. Shame. Urgency. The old panic that told me I'd gone too far, that I needed to fix things before they broke completely. My thumb hovered, already trained to apologize, to explain, to smooth it over. Another buzz. "Dad is furious." Another. "This isn't a joke anymore." My chest tightened, but something else settled underneath it. Solid, unfamiliar. Clarity. I realized she wasn't scared for me. She was scared of losing access, losing leverage, losing the version of me that always came back. I didn't type a response. I didn't draft one and delete it. I simply pressed the side button and watched the screen go dark. The silence was immediate and physical, like stepping out of traffic onto a quiet side street. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from release. Outside, headlights slid past on wet pavement. Someone laughed at the counter. Life kept moving. For the first time, Madison couldn't reach me. And for the first time, I didn't reach back. I woke to the thin gray light leaking through the hotel curtains, the kind that makes everything feel unfinished. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the hum of the heater and the distant traffic outside. My phone was face down on the nightstand. I already knew what it would say. When I picked it up, it vibrated like it had been waiting. Dozens of missed calls. A flood of texts. I scrolled past my sister's name, past my mother's clipped messages, and stopped on my father's. It was time-stamped just after 6 a.m. "Come home now. We need to talk." "No. Are you okay?" "No. Where did you sleep?" Just a command. A few seconds later, another message followed. "The utility accounts aren't loading. The bank portal says access is restricted. Call me immediately." I sat up, the cold air brushing my arms, and something in me settled. This was the sound I'd been waiting for. Not panic for me, but panic because I wasn't there. Because things weren't working the way they were supposed to without my quiet hands keeping them running. I imagined my father standing in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, jaw tight. My mother hovering, pretending to stay calm. My sister pacing, already blaming me for the inconvenience of their fear. Not my disappearance. Their loss of access. I didn't rush. I swung my legs off the bed, planted my feet on the carpet, and breathed. For years, mornings like this would have sent me scrambling, apologizing, fixing whatever had broken before anyone could get angry. Today my hands were steady. Another message came in. "We can't pay the bills without you." I turned the phone face down again. The silence felt earned. For the first time, their urgency didn't pull me back. It confirmed why I'd left. The door to Linda's office felt less like an entrance and more like stepping backstage right before the curtain went up. The hallway was narrow and quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your ears. I could hear my own heartbeat, slow but heavy, as if it knew something my mind was still catching up to. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately. She was already standing. Linda Graves didn't look surprised to see me. No rushed smile, no polite confusion. Just recognition. The kind that lands in your chest and stays there. She said my name once, gently, like she'd been saying it in her head for a while, and gestured me inside. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. A real place. Not staged. Sunlight cut through the tall window and landed across a thick file on her desk, tied neatly with a black ribbon. That alone made my stomach tighten. "Sit," she said, not as an order but as permission. I did, my coat still on, hands folded together because I didn't know what else to do with them. Linda didn't rush. She studied me the way my mother used to, looking past what I was showing and into what I wasn't saying. There was no judgment in her eyes, no expectation that I explain myself, just understanding. "You came," she said softly. I nodded. I didn't really know where else to go. "That's okay," she replied. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be." That was when it hit me. This was different. Every room I'd ever walked into with my family came with a role already assigned. The fixer. The calm one. The reliable one. But here, for the first time, no one was waiting for me to perform. Linda reached for the file but didn't open it yet. "Before we begin," she said, meeting my eyes, "you should know." Your mother thought very carefully about this moment. My chest tightened. I swallowed. Whatever was about to happen, I understood one thing clearly. This room wasn't a courtroom. It was a place where the truth finally stepped into the light. I sat across from Linda's desk, my hands folded so tightly my fingers ached. She didn't rush. She slid one folder toward me, then another, thick with paper, tabs sticking out like quiet warnings. The office smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner, the kind of neutral, calm professionals cultivate when they're about to change someone's life. "Take your time," she said. I opened the first folder. Deeds. Summaries. Trust document. My eyes skimmed at first, not really absorbing anything, until I saw the name printed at the top of every page. Mine. I blinked, then looked again. Same result. Property titles. Investment accounts. A family trust I'd heard about my entire life but was never allowed to touch. All of it listed under my name, clean and unmistakable, as if it had always belonged there. "That's not right," I whispered, my throat tightening. "There has to be a mistake." Linda shook her head gently. "There isn't." She explained the protections next. Clauses layered carefully, intentionally. No transfers without my consent. No shared access. No emergency overrides. Everything sealed, legal, and deliberate. Built like a quiet fortress. My chest felt too small for my lungs. I thought of every time I'd been told I was helping out. Every bill I paid without asking questions. Every signature I was encouraged not to read too closely. All those years believing I was just responsible, just useful. My mother had seen it. She'd seen all of it. I pressed my palm flat against the table to steady myself. Shock gave way to something heavier, grief braided with awe. She hadn't just trusted me. She'd protected me, patiently, silently, while I was still learning how to protect myself. "So," Linda said softly, watching me with careful eyes, "now you understand why they're panicking." I nodded, breath finally breaking free. Everything they thought they owned had never been theirs. And for the first time in my life, neither was I. I opened my mother's letter sitting alone at a small kitchen table in a borrowed apartment. The kind with thin walls and a humming fridge that never quite shuts up. Morning light slipped through the blinds, cutting the room into pale stripes. Her handwriting looked exactly the same, looped, deliberate, calm. Like she'd written it knowing I would need steadiness more than comfort. "If you're reading this," she wrote, "it means you've learned how to walk." The sentence knocked the air out of me. Not run. Not escape. Walk. You. On my own legs. She told me she had seen it coming long before I ever did. How I bent myself smaller to keep the peace. How guilt was the leash my family used best. "Don't confuse loyalty with self-erasure," she warned. "They will call it love." It isn't. I paused there, pressing my thumb into the paper, feeling the sting behind my eyes. Outside, a delivery truck backfired. Someone laughed on the sidewalk. Life kept moving while my chest cracked open. My mother didn't write with anger. That was the hardest part. Her tone was steady, almost gentle. "You are allowed to stop carrying people who refuse to carry themselves," she said. "Even love has limits. Especially love." I could hear her voice saying it, low and certain, the way she used to talk when she wanted me to listen, without panicking. She told me not to go back just to ease the discomfort of others. "Discomfort is not danger," she wrote. "You will survive it. By the time I reach the end, My hands were shaking, but my breathing had slowed. The pain was still there, sharp, undeniable, but underneath it was something new. Clarity. She hadn't written the letter to save me. She'd written it so I could finally save myself. By morning, my phone felt heavier than it should have. Not physically, emotionally. I didn't need to look to know what waited there. The vibration alone told the story. When I finally turned the screen on, the messages stacked so tightly they blurred into one long demand. Call me now. This isn't funny. You need to fix this. The bank won't let us in. The utilities are locked. What did you do? Not one asked where I was. Not one asked if I was okay. I sat on the edge of the bed in a generic hotel room off the interstate, the kind with thin curtains and burnt coffee in the lobby, and let the truth settle. Their world hadn't collapsed because I left. It collapsed because I stopped holding it up. Every emergency they listed was something I'd quietly handled for years. Accounts balanced, passwords remembered, problems smoothed over before they became visible. My absence didn't break the system. It exposed it. Another message came in from my father, short and sharp. Come home. We need to talk. What he meant was, we need you to make this go away. I didn't respond. I showered, pulled on clean clothes, and watched steam fog the mirror while something inside me cleared. For the first time, I wasn't rushing to absorb their panic. I wasn't translating their fear into action. I was just standing still. The realization was simple and devastating. They didn't lose me because I was cruel. They lost me because I was necessary. And now that necessity was gone. As I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked out into the cold, I felt steady. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just free. Let them scramble. Let them shout into the void I used to fill. This wasn't revenge. It was a reckoning. And it had already begun.